Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories, and not just any conspiracy theories about chocolate. And we're going to go through what is a conspiracy theory, what elements make up a conspiracy theory. So we've got that background, and then we're going to go look at some specific conspiracy theories to determine whether they're justified, whether they're true, whether they're false, whether they qualify as a conspiracy, all of those things. But before we get into today's episode, I want to thank all of the members of The Chocolate Life, because this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, like every episode, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. You can go to TheChocolateLife.com and you can click on the join button in the upper right-hand corner. It'll be green, and you can become a member of The Chocolate Life. There's a free membership, has been since 2008 when the site was founded, but there are also premium memberships if you want to support the work that I am doing here. And before we get into today's episode, I want to point out that you can go into the live chat in YouTube or the comments in LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can, just let me know where in the world you are connected from, and I'll get that and shout out up on screen. Or what you can do is you can ask a question or make a comment or say, hey, Clay, can you tell me more about this or that or the other as we go forward? And I would be happy to do that for you as well. So let's get started. But if you're watching on YouTube, click the button, do all the likes, do all the things on YouTube to help grow the channel and to share it with friends. So this is the homepage of The Chocolate Life. And for every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, there is an individual post. And today's post is on debunking chocolate conspiracy theories, right? And it provides a run of show. So this will be the order of things that I'm going to be talking about things today. And you can also go in. I'm also going to go in, before I think about that, I'm going to get rid of this overlay. Right. And if you want to follow along, you can click on this QR code in a phone, and it will take you over to this page on The Chocolate Life right now. So let's get all that out of the way in terms of homework. So number one. So, all right. The first off, let's just, talk about it, this whole sort of concept in general, right? Is conspiracy theories, are everywhere in the universe, right? But conspiracy theories in chocolate, what are they all about? Are there really conspiracy theories in chocolate? And the answer is yes, they are, right? Well, I can't find any aspect of human existence that I can't connect to chocolate or cocoa in some form or another. Why was I to think that chocolate was immune to or would it be safe from conspiracy theories? And I don't know why I thought that, but I was doing some research on Reddit specifically, and I came across 7 conspiracy theories around chocolate, which can be found on Reddit. And these are the 7. Number 1, Dubai chocolate. Okay. Some conspiracy theory about cost-saving switches to white chocolate, the existence of price-fixing cartels. Was there, in fact, a Nazi plot to blow up Churchill during World War II with a bomb, a chocolate, quote-unquote, chocolate bomb? Was the USD ration, which is a chocolate ration created by Hershey during World War II, was it a psyop? I mean, interesting kind of question. Was the banning of Kinder Surprise a cultural control psyop? Right, that's a conspiracy theory. All right, we've heard of MK Ultra and things like that during the Cold War. Was chocolate ever used as a mind control agent, right, in this context? And then finally, we're going to take a look at white chocolate and whether or not it's really chocolate or not. So what constitutes a conspiracy? We always want to start off with base definitions. When we're talking about a conspiracy, what do we mean? So we got 4 elements of conspiracies and what they look like. So the first element of a conspiracy is secrecy, right? The participants hide the plan from the public. And I should suppose that they actively hide or seek to hide the plan from the public. So a conspiracy, there has to be an element of secrecy. There has to be an element of coordination, multiple actors working together toward a hidden goal. right? So we've got our hidden or secret goal, right, which is being actively concealed. Number 3, documented collusion. So there are memos, whistleblower testimony, court filings, other sorts of documentation that says that multiple actors are in fact colluding. And you can see that there's an order here: secrecy, coordination, documented collusion, and then a specific intent to deceive. That all of the 3 things that are being done here, keeping it secret, coordinating, and colluding, right, are done with a specific intent to deceive. And you need all of those elements for there to be a conspiracy, right? Um, so, um, so the question is, if that's what we're going to use as a definition for conspiracy, right? How can discussions feel conspiratorial when they're not actually conspiracies? So number 1 is that there are misinformation memes. So we're going to do the element of the conspiracy. So they're misinformation memes and what they look like. Social media posts spread quickly, creating an echo chamber that feels secretive. So part of the conspiracy theorism is in fact a sort of secret group of people who are in possession of special knowledge that is not widely known, right? Number 1, proprietary processing. So what does that mean? So in chocolate specifically, what we're talking about is there is some secret process. So usually a trade secret process as opposed to a patented process. There's a trade secret process which is hiding something from the general public. And again, we as the insiders have special knowledge that the proprietary process is nefarious. It's being done specifically to deceive people. And then third, a third element of it might be brand centric hype. So some highly visible marketing can be misinterpreted as a cover-up for something nefarious. So I've got something viral campaign going on, and the purpose of that viral campaign is to, ooh, look at this shiny thing over here while I'm doing this stuff which is not so good, not so hot behind the scenes. So pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So those are how we're going to be framing this discussion about how I'm going to be framing this discussion around conspiracy theories, right? And so we've defined what we're going to use to frame what a conspiracy is. And I've also said, okay, here are 3 things that can make something seem conspiratorial when it might in fact not be an actual conspiracy, right? So having gone that. So what I've done is I've created a real quick TLDR summary of 7 of the points we're going to be talking about, what the core claim is, and what some court of evidence is going to be, right? And so if you're looking at this and you're watching it, again, the idea here is you can go to the QR code, you can scan it, you can look at this on your phone. You might get a better view of it, but it enables you to follow along after the fact in an easy kind of way, right, for doing this. And one question is, do you agree with this summary? Is there something that I've left out in this summary? Just let me know. You can go into the comments at the bottom of the page if you're a Chocolate Life member, or in the live chat on YouTube, or in LinkedIn or Facebook. Just let me know what you're doing. So I want you to use the table above as the starting point for your own research into, is this a conspiracy or not, right? As I go ahead and deconstruct them for you over the course of the rest of the episode. Again, did I miss anything? Did I get something wrong? Let me know. So let's talk about Dubai chocolate. Excuse me. When we do a deep dive into sort of conspiracy thinking about Dubai chocolate, there are a number of points that keep coming up over and over again. The first one is around this idea of a coordinated influencer push. I'm going to read these, right? Which is, many users speculate that the UAE, or a state-linked marketing agency, secretly recruited a wave of food influencers to hype the product. The narrative feels too perfect. It's a glossy, it's exotic flavored bar, gets massive exposure on social media, especially TikTok to start with, almost overnight, which some see as a deliberate PR operation rather than organic buzz. And so rather than going through and debunking these claims one by one, let's go through what the claims are. Number 2, the hype, which is coordinated, right, by a state-linked marketing agency is framed as a luxury image launderer. So we think of cities like Dubai. We think about the states there as have very tall buildings, very very wealthy people from oil and um, other industries. So the argument is that the bar's glittery packaging and exotic ingredients, pistachio, rose, saffron, sometimes kadaif, which is this form of phyllo dough, are meant to mask the UAE's broader reputation for labor exploitation, elite excess, and even the alleged prostitution tourism industry that fuels the country. So the second one is, there's a coordinated influencer push to distract from all these negative aspects of what's going on in Dubai. Separately, you may have heard there have been a number of recalls of Dubai chocolate products, one of which here in the US was Costco, was not the original product made in Dubai by Fix Dessert Chocolatier, which is the company that invented this. But there's also this notion of the chocolate is a front for a far less appetizing reality. The rumors of poop flavored or porta potty origin, alleged salmonella outbreaks and pistachio fillings. That, by the way, that may not be alleged. There have been recalls associated with quote unquote Dubai chocolate products, some of which do relate to contamination of ingredients. So that's not alleged, right? And it's a foul, foot-like smell that users attribute to dirty industrial scale production in unregulated Indian street market style facilities. So number one, Dubai chocolate doesn't come from India originally. It comes from the city of Dubai. So if are there in fact any street knockoffs or in street market file facilities in India? These are going to be companies that are doing Dubai style products, not necessarily quote unquote Dubai chocolate. So is there a sanitary concern cover up? What are they covering up? Right? This is going to be individual companies perhaps, but there's not sort of an organized industry-wide. I mean, irrespective of what you think of pistachios, do you like pistachios or not? Do you prefer pistachios to hazelnuts or peanuts, or do you prefer peanuts to hazelnuts or almonds? This might be a personal preference issue, and it doesn't actually say that there aren't products which are manufactured to take advantage of the Dubai chocolate phenomenon and use lower cost ingredients and to make these products under less than perfect circumstances. So number one, this is sort of a buyer beware. If you're going to buy a Dubai chocolate, what it says is don't go to some sort of discount outlet and get the cheapest version you possibly can. That might be where we're going here. Another one is Google search manipulation. Or search engine manipulation. Some theorists argue the term Dubai chocolate was deliberately coined to divert online searches away from negative stories. Again, not only do we have this notion of coordinated influencer push, but the coordinated influencer push was aided and abetted by Google and its algorithms in order to be able to distract from human rights issues. So, yeah, given the origin of Dubai chocolate, the number apparently, at Fix, there's a limit to 500 bars per day. I don't know if that's still true, but it was true a while ago. Do the creators of Dubai chocolate have the money to do this? Does TikTok have enough money to do this? Yeah, TikTok had enough. The owners of TikTok had enough money to do this. But why are they involved in this? I mean, the owners of TikTok are Chinese. Are they aiding, abetting the UAE government? This is a really complicated web of things to try to untangle here. But the whole idea is by flooding the web with food-related results, the conspirators hope to bury critical coverage. But we have to ask the question: what does Google gain from this, right? Or what does Fix Desserts? What do they gain from this? What is the original poster on TikTok gain from this? And it's not clear that there's any economic advantage by doing so. The other final one is economic planning hype. So the rapid global rollout large retailers, limited edition, all this sort of stuff is viewed as a textbook example of top-down economic planning rather than bottom-up social contagion. And it is, in my experience, when a very large companies or governments try to do top-down planning around a consumer product, that they're far less likely to be successful than a bottom-up viral contagion. So where we go. All right. So what we got is in yellow, right? That's my key for this is partially true, right? And partially untrue. So this is my key. So number one, right? And these numbers refer to the points up here. There is some evidence of coordinated influence or push, but the only involvement of the UAE government appears to be to promote tourism, right? So if I was trying to distract from human rights abuse, excuse me, why would I want people to come to Dubai? Doesn't make much sense. Number two, there are some op-ed pieces regarding distraction from human rights issues, but there is no evidence that quote unquote Dubai chocolate was specifically created to conceal them, right? So we need this. Oh, somebody is going to go and pay the people at Fixed Desserts to create this product, and we are deliberately going to use the creation of this product as the basis for social media marketing campaigns to distract from human rights abuses. When put that way, does it sound credible? And this is part of one of the things that you can do when you go through and try to deconstruct conspiracy theories is do these summaries on a point-by-point basis and then say them to yourselves out loud. And in the process of selling them to yourself out loud, do in fact they sound reasonable to you, right? Again, I'm assuming you're not of a conspiratorial mind to begin with, that you're not of the I am in possession of secret knowledge that no one else is in possession, or I'm in possession of secret knowledge that only a small group of people who are themselves being secretive, right, are in possession of. So think about it that way. So does it make sense that the UAE government went to this chocolatier in Dubai, said, create a product, which originally wasn't named Dubai chocolate, right? We're going to find some random social media influencer on TikTok to do a story about it. And the reason why we're doing this is to distract from our human rights abuse reputation. I think when you put it that way, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So number three, there have been recalls over contaminated products. There are no credible sources that confirmed that Dubai chocolate was intentionally formulated to taste like poop. You may not like pistachios. You may not like saffron, which has a particular aroma, although it's an ingredient in the original product. You may not like kanafe, this form of phyllo that's in there, the way it's flavored. But the idea there that the negative flavor and aroma concerns appear to be entirely anecdotal. I bought a product and I thought it smelled this way, or I bought a product and I thought it tasted that way, right? Again, entirely anecdotal. There's no formal data behind it. And the plural of anecdote is not evidence. So just important to know, you might have 5 or 6 or 7 anecdotal claims, but each one of those needs to be investigated individually to in fact determine if there is any basis in truth behind them. So we don't know them. Anecdotal claims are not evidence, right? That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So we can just say, we're just going to not going to take at face value anecdotal claims, right? There are no verifiable sources for the claims that search engines intentionally manipulated search results. Did Google change their algorithm, right, specifically to promote Dubai chocolate? Right. I don't know how much money would be required to do it. Right. And then they're talking specifically Google. Did X do this? Yeah, I could imagine that Elon Musk, the owner of X, would take some amount of money and manipulate the algorithms. Would the owner of TikTok, ByteDance, would they accept money? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that question. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think it's least likely with Google, right? But there is no evidence from credible, verifiable sources that this was done that I could find, right? And when it comes to state-sponsored, the notion of sponsored an economic planning, while the results hold true of the commercial exploitation of a trend. And this would be after the fact. So somebody noticed that there was this trend, and then I'm going to put money into it, right? There is no evidence that this was a top-down evidence of state-sponsored central planning from the outset. Oh, we're going to create this product. All right, so we're going to create the product for a particular reason, and then we're going to put money into promoting this. So that's my debunk around, claims, a point-by-point debunk of common claims around Dubai chocolate conspiracy theories, and Reddit. There are many other places where these might be. My particular source here was Reddit, because they were all in one place and they were easy to find. And if you know more or you have other debunking ones, go into the comments. Let me know what you think. I mean, even is this an interesting idea, debunking chocolate conspiracy theories, right? So referring back to the 4 elements of a conspiracy, back in the table up here, what constitutes a conspiracy, right? We can ask ourselves the question, all right? Number 1, right? Was this done in secret? There's no verifiable, credible documentation that 2 or more actors got together and colluded in secret, withholding documentation, right, to promote Dubai chocolate, right? And there was no obvious or documented intent to deceive. So I think that lacking this credible, verifiable evidence, what we can say is that the idea that any of these claims about Dubai chocolate being a conspiracy can be dismissed. Right? That's my thinking, and that's my thought process. And I'm saying it out loud, and the more I say it out loud, the more it rings true to me. So next one, there is a conspiracy theory, right? What the rumor says. There is the conspiracy that brands like Cadbury, big brand, suddenly flooded the shelves with white chocolate Easter eggs, Cadbury mini eggs, and other quote unquote white chocolate variants. So conspiracy theorists argue that the move is a deliberate response to the 2024-25 cocoa price spike, letting the company cut costs by using cheap cocoa butter instead of real cocoa solids. Now, what appears to make it sticky, what makes it stick, is the timing coincides with a sharp rise in West African cocoa and a corresponding price surge. So number 1, if you see it here in sort of pinkish red, that means it's false or unsubstantiated, right? Number 1, right? This whole theory is based on the idea that cocoa butter is less expensive than chocolate liquor, right, or cocoa powder. And as a matter of fact, when you think about the ingredients, in white chocolate, cocoa butter is the most expensive ingredient, and it is more expensive than chocolate liquor. So just from a basic economics, this whole theory is based on a complete misunderstanding of the economics of the cost of cocoa ingredients. People who don't know just assume that cocoa butter is cheap. And if you're a chocolate maker, right, small to large, you know that since the price spike, right, while the price of beans may have doubled, the price of cocoa butter has often tripled. So there is nothing to do with that. In addition to that, anyone who knows anything about this knows that cocoa butter is more expensive, right? And then finally, none of the elements of secrecy, intent to deceive, collusion, and coordination are present. So the conspiracy falls in addition to being economic nonsense. So simple 4-point test, and then with some basic understanding, we could do a real quick search. Is cocoa butter cheaper than chocolate liquor? And we would find out the answer is no. Right. So jumping on to conspiracy theory number 3, what the rumor says. The rumor says that in Canada, the Competition Bureau, so this would be the equivalent of, in the US, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the Competition Bureau charged big chocolate makers, Mars, Nestle, and Hershey, so 3 big chocolate makers, and these should be confectioners, because Hershey doesn't manufacture chocolate, but that's neither here nor there, with conspiring to fix the retail price of chocolate bars. So the allegation is that executives met in secret warehouses, exchanged price-setting spreadsheets, and used white noise tactics to evade wiretaps. And what did they use to generate noise? They moved around big bags of Skittles to around. Well, they were in a warehouse, and so moving bags of things would make sense. So why it sticks, right? Official government press releases confirm the investigation, right? So there is some credible basis behind this, giving the theory a veneer of legitimacy that fuels speculation about global chocolate oligarchs. So number one, this is something I'm going to make more clear after the fact, right? The existence of the investigation has been confirmed and charges have been filed. The elements of secrecy, intent to deceive, collusion, and coordination are all present here. So in that respect, yeah, this is a conspiracy. However, even though the named actors here, so Mars, Nestle, and Hershey, are all global companies, so multinationals, the theory falls short because there's no evidence this is happening any place but in Canada. There's no evidence that it's happening any place in Canada. So other jurisdictions may be doing an investigation, but there is no confirmation of these investigations. Is it likely that they're doing it in Canada, that they're doing it in other markets? It's not out of the realm of being plausible. And I'm going to update this particular post. It occurs to me as I'm talking through this that I need to go and update this to say that, yeah, while it is true in Canada, it may not be true globally. This may be the only market. This may be the only market. It is the only market where it has been proved, the market being Canada, the only market where it's been proved that there has been some price fixing being done, right? So let's go there. Like forget the notion. Well, yeah. All right, well, let's get that. So number 4, right? There is a conspiracy theory that during World War II, there was a Nazi plot to blow up Churchill using a bomb, right, made with chocolate. So here's what the rumor says. Nazi agents allegedly prepared a chocolate bar labeled Peter's chocolate, because Peter is a big brand, a well-known brand, that concealed a tiny steel and canvas explosive charge, right? So there is some more to the story, which is when a soldier broke off the end of the bar, the hidden mechanism would trigger a 7-second delayed explosion intended for the war cabinet and even Churchill, who was known for his sweet truth. Why it sticks? Well, number one, it appeared in a history.com. Don't get me, like ancient civilizations and aliens and all that kind of stuff, just because it's on a history channel documentary doesn't mean you should take it at face value. You need to do additional fact checking. But it did appear at history.com citing MI5 files. So there's an official history feeling about this. The dramatic chocolate bomb image spread quickly in Reddit's Our History and Our Conspiracy threads. And this is an illustration that was done contemporaneously that shows you the mechanism. Now, this is the mechanism of the bomb, how it worked, right? So these exist. You can find them. There's a link to it in the caption, right? So it turns out that it's true. The International Churchill Society and the Smithsonian both cite declassified MI files that describe a German sabotage plan involving a chocolate-coated steel slab. So this is where, and you notice that I use green to indicate this is conspiracy theory is in fact green. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It is in fact documented history. So let's go here. All right. Number 5, was there a military ration PSYOP chocolate, the USD ration? So what the rumor says is the U.S. Army's D-ration chocolate bar issued to soldiers in World War II was deliberately formulated to taste terrible. Right? And troops nicknamed it Hitler's secret weapon because the unpleasant flavor discouraged casual eating, reserving the bar for emergencies, and thus controlling soldiers' caloric intake and morale. Right? Why it sticks? World War II veterans, right, have confirmed that the chocolate tasted horrible, and sort of this propaganda framing in official histories makes the claim feel like a hidden psychological operation. However, the claim is true, right? Documents from Hershey and other sources confirmed that Colonel Paul Logan set a specification that the bar should taste little better than a boiled potato, so it would not be eaten except in emergencies. So the D ration was for emergencies, right? And so it turns out that the claim is true, but is it a conspiracy? The answer is no, it wasn't a conspiracy because it lacks all the elements of a conspiracy. It was not done in secret. It was not done to deceive. There's no documented collusion. Well, there was a specification within the government to Hershey to produce a bar that tasted a specific way, but that's not colluding, right? So is it a conspiracy? The answer is no, it's not a conspiracy. What I may do is I may change the color scheme and the little icon here to say this is a wash because it's not a conspiracy, even though the claim is true. Right? Who is going to benefit from this? Is the government going to benefit from this? Hershey did because it has the contract, but it was responding to a specification. There's no indication that it's the one who said, oh, they went to the government and said, let's go and we'd like to make this bar for you and we're going to make a lot of money. That's not there, right? So the next conspiracy theory is Kinder Surprise ban was a cultural control psyop, right? So the United States bans Kinder Surprise eggs, which are hollow chocolate eggs that have little tiny toys inside them, under the 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, right? What conspiracy theorists argue is that the ban is less about choking hazards and more about restricting a foreign cultural product, using safety rhetoric as a cover for a subtle American values enforcement. So I don't know in what year that was done. I'm going to update this so I know what year it's done. And so I might be able to time it with some other things that are going on culturally here in the US. But having said that, number one, there's an actual ban. And the official safety warnings, contain occasional translation errors. So the FDA has implemented the ban, and it's taken the ban originally written into English and then translated into a bunch of other languages. And the fact that there are translation errors means that this is a cover-up, right? That there's a deliberate cover-up here, which theorists cite as evidence of a rush, deliberately opaque regulation. So, right, number one, as a conspiracy theory, this is false, right? Number one, the U.S. Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act of 1938 prohibits non-nutritive objects in food, and the FDA has ruled that Kinder Surprise eggs violate that provision. Little tiny plastic toys are not nutritive or non-nutritive objects, right? And number two, the agency also cited the toy capsule as a choking hazard for children under the age of 3. So let's go back and take a look at it. There's no evidence that the decision was made to protect American values. It was not done in secret. It was not intended to, well, there's no documentation that it was secret. Did the FDA get together as a secret cabal and go, ooh, let's do this? No credible evidence of doing that. Was there an intent to deceive? Well, it's out there. Again, no credible evidence to be done. Who are they colluding with? They're certainly not colluding with the manufacturers of Kinder eggs. So who are they colluding with to make this happen? So there's no evidence that this is in fact a conspiracy, right? So if anybody comes and just say, you can debunk it with a couple of quick points here. 2 points, right? Number 7, so this is the last Reddit associated conspiracy theory that we're going to talk about today. So chocolate as a mind control agent during the Cold War, right? So the rumor says that the government, especially the CIA, this should be government agencies. I'm sorry, I put these in there this morning and I didn't quite fact check it as quickly as I needed, or check it for typos and grammar as I could have, as I was rushing to get ready to go live. So Fringe Post claimed that governments, agencies experimented with high-dose cocoa flavonoids and added psychoactive compounds to chocolate bars. Now, there was a lot of work, MK Ultra is happening around this time. There was a lot of work being done to figure out how we could influence people's decision makings, right? So to chocolate bars supplied to troops or civilians, aiming to boost morale or subtly influence cognition, right? So that's what the rumor is. The narrative ties into well-documented MK Ultra programs, suggesting a sweet extension of mind control agenda, right? So why it sticks. MK Ultra was a real thing, right? And we are accustomed to claims that the government is trying to control the way we think, right? So, right, the lack of concrete evidence, right, makes it a perfect What if? Well, we know the government had an MK Ultra program, right? What if, right, they extended it to include chocolate? What would that mean? Everybody loves chocolate. Could we give people a chocolate bar that would change the way they think? And we know today that that is true. I can take a chocolate bar, lace it with THC, lace it with CBD, and it will in fact change our minds, right? It will affect our cognition, the way we're thinking. So we know that in theory it works, right? And there are many kinds of chemicals that I can add to chocolate in different forms that do have psychoactive and mind-altering properties. Cocoa flavanols and flavonoids are not high on the list of things that have those properties. There are other compounds in chocolate. So there are things which affect serotonin uptake, anandamide, which affects THC receptors and things like that. So there are other things that are indigenous to chocolate, which are in fact alter brain chemistry, right? But I don't know that flavanols are high on the list of those things. But it turns out that there is no evidence. So we're going to debunk this. And I may have the wrong color here. This may need to be red. Extensive searches of, it is on this screen, but it's not on this screen in any event. Extensive searches of government archives, scholarly articles on MK Ultra, and reputable histories of the program reveal no evidence that chocolate was ever used as a delivery vehicle for psychoactive drugs in a systematic government-sanctioned operation. No primary documents, FOIA releases, or credible secondary sources substantiate this claim. So much as we like to rail against the government and mind control programs and super soldier programs and things like that, it doesn't appear as if chocolate, especially not the D ration, was ever was ever an actual thing, right? So there's no evidence of a conspiracy theory for this, which you can debunk. So finally, the last thing we're going to talk today, and we're rushing through these a little quicker than I thought we might. But if you have questions, comments, things you'd like to ask me about this, or just give me a quick shout out, let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Go to the live chat on YouTube, the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook, and let me know what you think about any of the things we say. So I'm talking about this white chocolate isn't chocolate, right? This is not a conspiracy theory. At least I don't ever see it presented as a conspiracy theory in the sense there is an intent to deceive, right? Or there is collusion, or anything is being done in secret. White chocolate was introduced in the late 1930s by Nestle, 36, 37, by Nestle, right? Number one is a way to use up extra cocoa butter. Throwing the milk in it made it more nutritional, right? And in fact, Cadbury has a bar, I believe it's the Milka bar, which they were actively telling people, it was a way to, instead of drink your milk, eat your milk, even though it had huge quantities of sugar in it. So I don't think this is a conspiracy theory at all. I've stated right up front, this is not a conspiracy theory, but it is a delusion, right? And by delusion, what I mean is it is a tightly held belief that resists all evidence to the contrary, right? I can, go into, is white chocolate real chocolate is something that shows up in Reddit and all sorts of other social media platforms, that question on a regular basis, right? And it's not white chocolate because it doesn't XYZ, right? So it is not a conspiracy theory. It is a delusion. And I'm including it here because it may be the most widely held misunderstanding about chocolate. And it's the one I encounter most often, this notion that white chocolate isn't real chocolate. There's a little summary table here about what the law says. So we're looking at US law, EU law, and the law in other jurisdictions. This is a summary table, and it's not really good, but I just wanted it to be a summary table. So what we can take away from this, however, is that in most major food regulating bodies, so in the Code of Federal Regulation, the FDA here in the United States, in the Codex Alimentarius, which is used widely in the EU and elsewhere, right? What we'll do is we'll find a definition for what white chocolate, what here in the US we would call a standard of identity. And that standard of identity here in the US for white chocolate is, I link directly to the Code of Federal Regulations. So there's a link, and it's to the page which is all about chocolate products. But here is the section 21.163.124, which specifically talks about white chocolate. And within section 163.124, is this phrase, I think it's 2, section 2, right? Is this description? White chocolate contains not less than 20% by weight of cacao fat. And then it tells you in the intermeeting, right, how to calculate that 20%. So if I have 100 grams, I have a white chocolate bar that weighs 100 grams, at least 20 grams of that is cocoa butter. That's the minimum requirement. It doesn't say that there is a maximum, but there must be a minimum of at least 20% cocoa butter. Also, the finished white chocolate contains not less than 3.5% by weight of milk fat. So what it says is that in addition to the fat from the cocoa butter, there is going to be milk fat, right? And in that 100-gram bar, there's at least 3.5 grams of fat, which comes from the milk. So, okay, so that. And then it also contains not less than 14% by weight of total milk solids. So, after we've got the powdered milk, which is what we most often make white chocolate from, after we've got that, right? So we've got 14% by weight of total milk solids. So this would include things like lactose, which is milk sugar. So that's included in there. The proteins, the whey protein, and other things that are in the powdered milk. So with 14% by total milk solids, of that 14%, 14 grams in a 100-gram bar, 3.5 grams are fat. So it can be higher than that. So I could use skim milk, right? If I use non-fat milk, I've got to use some other form of dairy fat in here. So you won't often find a non-fat white chocolate bar for that reason, because in order to qualify as milk chocolate, there needs to be at least 3.5% dairy fat, milk fat in the finished product. So, and then not more than 55% of some sort of nutritive carbohydrate sweetener. By this they mean sugar, as opposed to something like stevia or xylitol or some other sugar substitute. So in a 100-gram bar, right, white chocolate cannot contain more than 55% sugar or sugar equivalent. Right? So we have 55 grams, no more than 55 grams. So I can have more cocoa butter, I can have more milk, right? All of the things that fit within the list of ingredients that are acceptable to be in white chocolate. And what might those be? Right, so we can go to the CFR, we can go down to section 124, right? And we can find out. So here's A2, which is what I was just reading to you. The dairy ingredients, right? Cream, milk, fat, butter. So I could use butter oil, right? Or dehydrated butter in it, milk, dry whole milk, concentrated milk, sweetened condensed milk, skim milk, concentrated buttermilk, dried buttermilk, malted milk. This includes emulsifying agents, right? And spices, natural and artificial flavorings, ground whole nutmegs, coffee, anything that does not imitate the flavor of chocolate milk or butter. And those can be part of the ingredients in white chocolate. So I could make a peanut flavored white chocolate and grinding the peanuts directly into, and the peanuts would be in the ingredients list for white chocolate. I can add antioxidants. Why would I want to add antioxidants? Because it turns out that cocoa butter on its own is fairly volatile and will oxidate very, very quickly compared with regular chocolate, because the non-fat cocoa solids, the brown stuff, the cocoa powder, is full of antioxidants, and the antioxidants in the brown part will keep the cocoa fat from going rancid. And so sometimes you will put some sort of added antioxidant into the recipe to keep the cocoa butter, the cocoa fat component, from going rancid too quickly. And it's a form of preservative. It could be labeled as antioxidant. In the EU, you might have to label it as a preservative. In the US, I'm not sure if you do or not. So anyway, I can add whey or whey products as long as they don't exceed 5% of the total amount by weight. So I could add whey protein into the mix of white chocolate. I could still call it white chocolate as long as they weren't. So anyway, so here's the list of ingredients that could be in white chocolate. Here's the maximum amount of sugar, the minimum amount of cocoa butter, the minimum amount of dairy that need to be in it. And from here, you can concoct a recipe that is white chocolate. The important part of this is here in the United States is the following phrase, nomenclature. The name of the food is white chocolate, right? So if you're using a non-cocoa butter fat, you could call it coating, right? But the name is white chocolate. The fact that it says white chocolate here, right, it gives the product legal status. In the United States, white chocolate is legally chocolate, right? You might say, hey, Clay, right, is my personal opinion that because it doesn't contain any non-fat cocoa solids, it doesn't contain any of the brown stuff that gives chocolate its color, because it doesn't contain any cocoa powder, the non-fat cocoa solids, it can't be classified as chocolate. I am not going to call it chocolate because I have a personal belief that this is in fact not chocolate. The answer to the question is it's a delusion, right? You can hold that delusion, but the facts are, right, as I pointed out here earlier, excuse me, right? What is a delusion? A delusion is a tightly held belief, a closely held belief that resists all evidence to the contrary, right? All you have to do if you're here in the US is go to CFR 21.163.124, and you can say, oh my gosh, white chocolate is really a thing, right? Here in the United States. There is a corresponding definition, which is being used in the EU, Codex Alimentarius. There is a similar definition in the UK. There are related definition for other parts of the world. So white chocolate is really chocolate. There are no elements about white chocolate which rise to the level of this is a conspiracy theory. Nobody's trying to keep it secret. There's no, documentation of collusion. There's no intent to deceive. Right? There might be people who are mislabeling their product, but there's no cabal. There's no group of people who are intending to deceive you. Right? Right? It's just this is codified into law, but it wasn't codified into law until relatively recently, excuse me, which is something that people may not understand. So even though white chocolate was introduced in 1936, 1937, for most of the time between 36 and I think it was 2014, although it may have been before then, I can look it up. Right, is that the industry relied on what are called temporary marketing permits. So on a regular basis, every 2 years or 4 years, they go to the FDA and they say there's no standard of identity written into the Code of Federal Regulations for white chocolate, but here we have a description of what we want to label white chocolate. Is this okay by you? Right? But they would have to go and redo this on a regular basis. And eventually, the industry got together, led by Guittard and a bunch of other people, and said, can we just update the section 21.163 to include a definition for white chocolate? And the FDA said yes. And I think that it was ratified in 2014. So we could call it white chocolate before then, but it was called white chocolate as a result of temporary marketing permits. And this is similar, by the way, this is similar to what's going on with ruby chocolate. Because ruby chocolate has too much citric acid in it. The citric acid is there as a result of the way the beans are processed, because there's a residual citric acid component, which is too high. Legally, it couldn't be called chocolate in the United States. But Barry Callebaut went to the FDA and said, we'd like a temporary marketing permit to call ruby chocolate chocolate, right? Because it meets all of these definitions. The only thing that's out of whack here, or that's not within the original regulatory scope for chocolate, is the citric acid. Citric acid is known to be safe. Can we call ruby chocolate chocolate under the terms of a temporary marketing commitment? The FDA is going, yes, you can go about doing that. Will ruby chocolate ever enter into the Code of Federal Regulations? Right? I don't think so. And one of the reasons why is because it is a product of Barry Callebaut. We're not going to have a whole lot. We're not going to have the rest of the industry rallying behind Barry Callebaut to get ruby chocolate added to the Code of Federal Regulations. So I don't think there's a high likelihood that this is ever going to happen. Right? So that's why we can point to the Code of Federal Regulations. Great when there's authority that we can do this. But unfortunately, What we have is a whole bunch of people who are anti-science and anti-government, and they're not going to trust anything that the government says. And this is where conspiratorial thinking enters in. You get to, the dark corners, or the white corners, the dark corners of the internet. And there are a bunch of people that says we can't trust the government about anything. If the government publishes, we should discount it. And so there might be elements of conspiracy thinking about this, but there's no widespread conspiracy theory about whether white chocolate is not chocolate. But what are some of the reasons why people talk about it? Number one is chefs and chocolatiers often classify chocolate by the presence of cocoa solids. So cocoa powder, cocoa mass, or nibs. Without them, the flavor profile is fundamentally different, but it is the lack of the parts of the cocoa bean that turn chocolate brown, because there is no non-fat cocoa solids in white chocolate. That's why it's not chocolate, right? People argue that, but it turns out to be not true, right? Consumer expectation. Most shoppers associate chocolate with the color brown and a distinct cocoa taste. Now, if you want white chocolate that has a distinct cocoa taste, what you're looking for is heavily roasted cocoa beans, and the butter which is extracted from those cocoa beans has not been deodorized. So if you're looking for interesting white chocolate, look on the back or ask the company who's making it, if it's a small chocolate maker, if the cocoa butter has been deodorized or not. You're looking for undeodorized or natural cocoa butter. And if you've got an undeodorized or natural cocoa butter, the chances of it having a pronounced cocoa flavor is going to be there. My first revelation about this was with El Rey's ICOA, ICOA, which is a very heavily roasted natural cocoa butter white chocolate. It's an award-winning. For many, many years, people thought that ICOA was one of the best white chocolates in the world because it had this pronounced cocoa flavor from its roasting profile and the fact that it was undeodorized, as opposed to a highly processed deodorized cocoa butter, which is typical of Swiss and Belgian, Northern European, and European chocolates in general, white chocolates in general. So some people say that there are marketing motives behind this. Some brands highlight white chocolate to command a premium price while using greater quantities of cheaper ingredients. Excuse me. The cheaper ingredients being sugar and milk solids. Critics sometimes view this as marketing sleight of hand rather than a genuine product category. And again, one of the challenges here is that cocoa is more expensive an ingredient than chocolate liquor. It's usually more expensive than cocoa butter. It's not always. There's an inverse relationship. If cocoa butter is expensive, cocoa powder has a tendency to be relatively cheaper. If cocoa powder, because of demand, if cocoa powder is expensive, cocoa butter has a tendency to be relatively cheaper. So there is that inverse market dynamic, which often shows up. But in this day and age, with the price of cocoa beans where they are, right, at, even though, as I say, the price of cocoa beans, was astronomically higher last year, they're settling down. Right now, they're about half what they were at the market high. The cost of cocoa butter has risen faster. The cost of cocoa butter was 50 to 100% more expensive than cocoa beans at the market peak. And so people who think that white chocolate is cheaper don't know what they are talking about, right? Just to let you know. Now, well, white chocolate is not necessarily cheaper. It might be. Or what's happening is that people are replacing cocoa butter with actually fats that are in fact cheaper. So palm oil fractions, right? But then you can't label it as real chocolate. So that's it for today. That's it for today for my discussion on debunking chocolate conspiracies. I had fun. This mask, obviously, people will recognize from the movie V for Vendetta, and it's associated with Guy Fawkes. This mask originally, and it actually doesn't have anything to do with conspiracy theories per se. If you want to have a little fun, go look up the origin of this mask and its relationship to Guy Fawkes and what it is that he was talking about. And this is one of the reasons why I say that it's hard to find any aspect of chocolate that doesn't, or it's hard to find any lack of connection between any aspect of human existence and chocolate. So even within this context of Guy Fawkes and the V for Vendetta mask, and I took the original photo, which I may post further down. I may do a side by side to let you know what the original photo looked like in this one. But the original photo didn't have oozing chocolate out of the sides here, right? So this was, I asked ChatGPT to take this image, the original image that I used, and from Mohammed Hosseini Rad, you can see the link down here. And I asked it, I gave it a prompt that says, change it and make it look this way. The original was too dark, and so I asked it to re-render it, making it a little lighter. And so the oozing chocolate and all this kind of stuff was just a benefit from what's going on. After the episode is over, what I will do is I will go make the changes into the post that I said I would, and I'll create a side-by-side image. So you can see here was the original, and here's the change that got made. And with that, we're done with this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. Here we are. This is the post for today's episode, Debunking Chocolate Conspiracy Theories, right? You can go, you can follow along. And as I am, if you're watching this at a later time, you can follow along. So you can figure out, you can, if there are links, you can click on the links. I don't think there are, other than the CFR Code of Federal Regulations link, and a link to the article at the UK National Archives from which the image for Churchill's chocolate bomb was taken. So there are some links. You can follow along. You can go do this. If you are a member of the Chocolate Life, you can go down to the bottom and you can continue the conversation in any way that you want. If you're watching this, you can scan the QR code, which is appearing at the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and it will take you to the page behind you. And with that, I want to close in two ways. Number one is that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life. You can go there. I don't do Patreon. I'm not taking ads. I'm not doing merch or anything like that. So the way to support the work that I'm doing is to become a member. There's always a free membership tier. There has been since I founded the site in 2008 is when the Chocolate Life January spun up. Right? But there are, in fact, premium membership tiers. So those premium membership tiers help support the work that I'm doing here, keeping the site online, paying for hosting and development and things like that. But higher tiers of membership also include coaching and consulting hours. So you can get somewhere between 1 and 3 hours of coaching consulting by becoming a member. And those coaching and consulting hours, because you are a member of the Chocolate Life, are less expensive than if you just decided to go and buy them a la carte one at a time. And with that, we're done. We're done with this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, episode 152, Debunking Chocolate Conspiracy Theories. And with that, I want to say thank you, everybody, and remind you, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you just might want to think that you're doing it wrong. And with that, everybody, until the next time, ciao.